Welcome everyone to part 2 of Navigating the NDIS series. It is a 7-session series designed to equip you with the knowledge and tools to successfully navigate the NDIS with confidence. I'd firstly like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. My name is Bree. I'm joining you today from the land of the Marmarang people of the Yuin Nation. I'd also like to introduce you to my colleague Jen and Kate Reid from Inspire & Co. Today, we will be discussing preparing for your NDIS planning meeting. We'll firstly hear from Kate, a knowledgeable support coordinator and an experienced parent. And then Jen, who is also an experienced parent, will share her insights, and then we'll answer some pre-submitted questions from attendees and the kindred community. Today we'll be covering organising reports, assessments and quotes, information that parents can prepare, thinking about goal setting considerations and supports that can assist you in the preparation process. We do encourage you to be part of the conversation, whether you're watching on Zoom or if you're live in our kindred community. Jennifer and I will monitor the chat, and if time permits, we may be able to answer any additional questions that you have been raised. Please bear in mind that we're not able to provide personalised advice based on your individual circumstances, and we encourage you to follow up with your early childhood partner, your LAC or a knowledgeable support coordinator, or the NDI directly. And the information that we're presenting today is current, and obviously with the NDIS, we know that things are always subject to change. As we get started, I'm going to hand over to Kate, who's going to share a wealth of information, which I'm really looking forward to hearing. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks so much, Bree, and thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of the kindred community. It's certainly something that I've followed for a while, both as a parent and a business owner, and I love what you're doing for the community, so well done.
Thank you.
Further from what you said, I do want to bring in that everything I say today is current today. You may be aware that the NDIS are bringing in a new software system come the 31st of October. That could change everything. So we know a little bit about what they're proposing, but we all know that sometimes things don't exactly go to plan. And until we get to that point of having it in place, we're not 100% sure how everything is going. So from here, I'll start my presentation. I am open to absolutely any questions, and I'll be as open and honest and transparent as I can. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. So here is the presentation. I am going to go through some of it rather quickly, and the reason for that is because it is more related to therapists and them writing their reports, but I thought it was really, really valuable information to give to the parents who actually are going to the meetings and who are strongly advocating for their children or for the participant that they care for. So as Bree said, my name's Kate. I am the mother of 3 children, 2 who are autistic and who I love dearly, love all of them dearly. The NDIS has changed my life. It really has. But in saying that, I've been on a pretty tough journey right at the start. We've come out at the other end, and a lot of that has been through knowing where to go for the right advice. So I created this business because I wanted to help people not go on the same journey that I was on. And I do know firsthand how it can change your life when things are put in place properly. So that's what I'm trying to achieve for you. Even if I give you 3 or 4 different pieces of information that you take away, that could be enough that just tips you over the line for the NDIS to say, well, yes, actually, you do need that. So these are the things we'll cover today. As I said, I'm not going to go through them all one by one. You can go back and have a look at them afterwards. You will get a copy of all of these slides so that you can have a look at it. I'm more than happy for you to provide these slides to your providers when they are writing your reports. We also offer a service whereby we give a similar presentation to providers so that they are getting their reports right. So you're more than welcome to ask your providers to contact us. No charge. That's my way of giving back to the community so that we can help try and get them their terminology right. So things that we help with are access requests, pre-planning documents, plan reassessments, annual reviews, change of situations, and S100s. Unfortunately, the only thing that we can't help you with is AAT because that is out of our scope.
And just for anyone, sorry, just clarify what AAT is, because there might be someone that's watching that hasn't actually heard that terminology before.
Yeah, so AAT is the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, and that is where you go. It's an external body that will determine what your needs are if you can't agree with the NDIS.
Thank you.
Now, there are a couple of different people that I think you really need to understand what their roles are. Support coordinators, which is what we do. Local area coordinators, which is a partner in the community of the NDIS, and then planners. Now, again, this is going to change come the 1st of December. So whilst I can give you this information now, we don't actually know what that looks like when the new software system comes in. So at the moment, the local area coordinator gathers all your information. They forward it to the planner and they say, this is the plan that we think the participant should have. Please remember, at no time does the local area coordinator have any authority to determine what is reasonable and necessary. So when you're sitting in a planning meeting and they say, you won't get access to that, you won't get funding for that, you need to be a really strong advocate for your child or your participant and say, with respect, I understand that that is your thoughts and that's probably your experience, but I request that you put that forward to the planner, because the planner is the only one as the delegate of the CEO that can determine what is reasonable and necessary. So that's something to consider. A planner is employed by the NDIS and they are the ones that approve plans. So planners are the only ones that can approve the supports in your plan. And they're the people come the 1st of December that should be generating all the plans. Support coordinators.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify for anyone that is watching as well, if you are in the early childhood space and might be an EC partner, not an LAC.
Sorry, and you are correct. So an ECIC partner and a local area coordinator are very similar. They do very similar roles. There's just one for, they've just taken it up to under 9s,
yeah,
and then over 9s. So ECIC are under 9s, local area coordinators are over 9s. Local area coordinators are employed by the NDIS as an external partner in the community. So they will always have the NDIS's best interests at heart. And that's okay. Support coordinators are very different. We're funded by the money that is in the plan. So you as a participant or child representative, plan nominee, you determine how you choose to spend that funding. So what I like to say is that as a support coordinator, we're on the team. We always place the participant at the middle of every decision that we make, and we don't make decisions. We give you ideas, we give you options, and then it's absolutely up to you to make the best decision for your child or participant. When we're writing reports, it's really important to have categories of the information that we require. So first of all, we want information about the participant. Then there's certain domains that the NDIS look at because it impacts the it impacts the participant's functional capacity. Now that is what the NDIS will fund on, is functional capacity. So we need to understand what is the functional capacity of this client. Recommendations, that's actually not a word that I like using, but everyone uses it in the NDIS. It's recommendations for therapies. I personally don't think it should be recommendations. I'm not here to change the world, but I think it should be requirements. What is the requirement for this participant? What do they need to have a normal life? not the best life, a normal life. So when we're saying recommendations, we're actually saying this is what we think it should be. But when it's a requirement, it's actually, this is what it needs to be. So there's a slight difference in the wording and the meaning. We also need to include risks. What are the risks to the participant, to the NDIS, and to the community? Because they're really, really important. If there's major risks, if this isn't funded, if a support isn't funded, the NDIS need to know that, because they also have a duty of care. And then we need to look at important notes. So tell me about the family's experience. Tell me about the family's makeup. Because whilst NDIS plans are very individual and they're all about the participant, we all know that a participant affects the entire family. And especially when you've got some families with 2, 3, 4 participants, all needing different things, it affects everybody. And I'm yet to find one special needs parent that doesn't suffer from depression, anxiety, or stress. It is a hard job. So we need to get that information and that evidence. Every time we talk about information, we're talking about evidence. The NDIS need to see evidence. So all about the getting to know you, the participant. What are your diagnoses? What are your goals? Tell us the whole story about you and your family. Who do you have in your life supporting you? Are there formal supports? Formal supports are people that get paid. Are there informal supports? Are there no informal supports? Has the informal supports changed? Now that's the basis of all the work that we as parents do. We are informal supports. And if we weren't here, it would cost the government a lot of money to give our children, our participants, the same level of care. So what effect does that have on you? Mainstream supports. Really, really important. What other supports are out there other than what the NDIS provide? And, we have had trouble in the past where, because the NDIS have come in, disability has said, well, it's the NDIS's responsibility. NDIS are now pushing back on that and saying, well, there are mainstream supports. So this is something that needs to be looked at, and we need to include it. Are you accessing mainstream supports? Is your child playing sport? Is your child going to an art group or a drumming group? That's okay, they're mainstream. What's the purpose of this report? What progress have you made in your therapy sessions? Really important, because if you haven't made any progress, then they will sit there and think, well, why should we keep funding it if you're not achieving anything? Now, some people won't achieve anything, but they will maintain their status quo. That also is so important. People with more physical disabilities, cerebral palsy, if they don't have physio, their body will become tighter. So it's also a matter of maintaining. What new goals do you have? I don't know how many of you have been through a plan reassessment, got your new plan, and found that the goals in the About Me section are exactly the same as they were 3 years ago. We need to make sure that all of this information is updated. These are the domains that I was talking about in terms of functional capacity: communication, social interaction, learning, mobility, self-care, and self-management. They are the 6 areas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 areas that the NDIS will look at on how your disability affects your daily life. So therapists really need to concentrate on those 6 key criteria. Also, when we're talking about the NDIS, all impairments must be considered substantial. So if it's not substantial, it generally won't be covered. And so it's vital that the evidence in your reports speaks strongly to these functional impairments. Recommendations/requirements must be accurate, specific, clear, and concise. So what is it that you're looking for? Is it, do they say, needs OT, speech, psychology? What are we doing? What we're doing is we're saying to the NDIS, you determine how much my participant needs. That's not correct. We want to go in and tell the NDIS, this is what my participant needs. They need weekly speech of 1 hour a session. They need weekly OT of 1 hour a session. They need exercise physiology. So we need to be really, really specific about what we're working on and what sort of therapy they need, but not just therapy, report writing. That needs to be included as well. Travel. Now, travel is very difficult to get included in a plan, especially for children, but it needs to be shown, if you need it, why you need it. So all these things need to be thought about. Case notes, provider travel, low risk, high risk items. They all need to be very specific and AT requests put in. Most importantly, there must always be consistency across all of the reports. So if you've got one report from a psychologist saying he needs monthly psychology and fortnightly speech, and you've got the speechy saying, actually, he needs monthly speech and weekly psychology, the NDIS don't know what is correct. So that's why so much preparation goes in before we actually even get to the report writing stage. How much, what do they need? What are you looking for? You are the parent, you are the caregiver. You know your participant better than anyone else. We still need to listen to specialists because obviously they're paid a lot of money to get a very specialised degree, and they do have knowledge. But ultimately, I say to all my parents, trust your gut. If something is not sitting right with you, don't do it. So we'll sit down and go through all of this with you. Risks. What are the risks to the community? What are the risks to the participant? What are the risks to the NDIS? What are the risks to your family? We need to have a section in there about risks. A couple of important notes. Never, ever, ever get your allied health professional to send reports directly to the NDIS. They should go to either yourself to check before they go to the NDIS or your support coordinator. A, because you want to make sure all the recommendations are aligned, and B, the number of reports I've had to send back for spelling mistakes, incorrect participants' names, it's actually quite atrocious. So please make sure you check reports before you send them to the NDIS. And we love checking, well, no, we don't love checking reports, but that is part of our job. That is what we do. Yep, done all those ones. Terminology, so important, terminology. Are we talking the same language as the NDIS? I consider support coordinators as translators of the NDIS so that we can communicate on a different level. It's really important to say why the recommended supports are reasonable and necessary. We need to put legislation into reports to say this is the legislation, because remember, the NDIS can produce all the operational guidelines they like. They can produce anything. If it's not stated in the legislation, that is what we go by. So we have to remember to reference back to the legislation. I get a little bit on my high horse here. I do apologise.
You can hear the passion in your voice. I like it.
There is a lot of passion, because I think people really do get taken for a ride sometimes. And unfortunately, there is this godlike thought process that, you know, the NDIS is power. And I don't think that's correct. You know, we do have power ourselves as parents, as support coordinators, and you really need to have someone in your corner. On that note, from a personal point of view, I do not ever go to a plan reassessment meeting on my own for my own children. I will always have one of my support coordinators in there to speak for me if I need, because I know as soon as I step into that mother mode, I become emotional. I can help anyone in this job, and I can be strong and I can be held together and everything else, because it's not my child. I don't have that emotional involvement in it. As soon as it's mine, totally different story. So please make sure you've got someone that's got your back to go into the meeting with you, because you can have a support person, you can have a support coordinator, anyone can go into that meeting with you. Useful links. They're just some links about actually writing reports. Again, that's something that I'd really like you to give to your providers if you're not comfortable with the reports that we're writing. Please remember that some therapists are brilliant at writing reports and not so good at therapy. Some therapists are brilliant at therapy and not so good at NDIS reports. They haven't been given any training on what's required. So sometimes when clients come to us, we will really look at who their providers are, and we'll look at the reports that they've produced for previous reviews. If we're not comfortable with where they're at, we will recommend that you even just use another provider that we know is capable of writing a very good NDIS report. You only need to use them for the assessment. You don't need to use them ongoing, but it's really, really important to get someone that can write a good NDIS terminology, I don't know if that's a word, report. My top tip for preparing for a planning meeting is to go prepared. Make sure you have covered every single basis that you can. Make sure you have all the documentation, justifications, and evidence. The biggest word I want to hear throughout everything is, this is the evidence that I have. This is the evidence that the provider has produced. It is evidence. It's not just a report. It's not just my thoughts. It's evidenced. Don't be afraid to delay the meeting until you have everything you need. Don't be bullied into going into a meeting, and please make sure you get everything in writing. So if the NDIS ring me in regards to my children, I generally say to them, I'm really sorry, I'm in a meeting, can you put that in an email? Very, very important, so that there is a paper trail for if something goes wrong, we can go back and fix it. Let your allied health team talk to each other. Let them know what each one is recommending. Let them know what your plan is, so that, again, everybody can be aligned. Constantly rework your goals. They change as the participants either gets older or their needs change. The about me section, really important. It frustrates me to no end when I get about me's from 3 years ago. It's not relevant. So, work with someone, rewrite it yourself for what is current now, and say to them, please include this in my new plan. This is the current information. Start asking about reports and updates at around the 253-day mark of your plan, if it's a 12-month plan, so that you have plenty of time to get your reports. Follow up, follow up, follow up. The reports are only important to you. They're not important to the therapist. I know that sounds terrible, but you will need to hound them to get them. Get someone to help you. Get someone to step you through the process. Doesn't have to be me. It can be any support coordinator. It can be a friend that knows the NDIS inside out. You're not in this on your own. Tell the NDIS what you, as the parent, caregiver, participant, need to live a normal life. Please remember, it's all about living a normal life. It's not about living an extraordinary life. You are the best person to know what you or your family need. Not the NDIS who's sitting behind a desk and has never met you or the participant. Not your allied health therapists that are sitting in a clinic spending an hour a week with your children, if that. It's you. So therefore, you need to put in your own carer's impact statement. I want to know all the emotional, physical, and financial toll that caring for a person with a disability has on you. And I think the biggest problem that we as carers do is we underestimate the impact that it has on us. And the reason we do that is because it's normal. This is our normal, everyday life. We don't know any different. But if you actually look at other normal families with neurotypical children, do they argue with their parents about going to school every day? They might once a month, but not every single day. Do they argue about what food they're eating every single meal? No. That takes energy, that takes headspace, and it's exhausting. So we need to convey that to the NDIS. So what evidence to include? The most important report that you can get, or assessment that you can get for your participant, is a functional capacity report. That's generally conducted by an OT. And again, there are different types of functional capacity reports. If you go, and we always ask, if you want to use your own provider, I will always ask them, how much are they going to charge you? If they say between $500 and $1,000, I would question the amount of detail that that assessment is going to cover. The FCAs that we look for are between $2,000 to $3,000. So generally around the 10 hours work mark. If it's not, you're not getting what you need to get the best result from the plan reassessment. Carer's impact statement, really important. That comes from you. It comes from your heart. It shouldn't be any more than 2 pages, but it really needs to cover what the effect this is having on you as a mother, father, carer, whoever you are to this person. Weekly timetable, extremely important. You're asking for this funding. How are you going to use it? How much do you actually support your participant? Are you up 4 times a night, not sleeping? That needs to be in a weekly timetable, because generally the NDIS, unless you're extremely complex, the NDIS will fund, a lot of stuff during the day and nothing at night, because we're all supposed to be sleeping. How many people here have had a full night's sleep in the last 10 years? I haven't. So we need to show that. Also, again, coming back to this family dynamic, really important to show what other diagnoses are in the family. Is there more siblings? We know that with ASD children, if you have one child with ASD, you've got 50% more chance of having another child. So it's quite prevalent that we have a lot of families that we're supporting. That's just something for you to ponder. I really, really like it, and I think it's so very true. Have a read of it in all your spare time, and see if it changes your outlook on anything. That's me. That's my little spurl for today. As I said, I'm Kate, mother of 3 children, 2 who are autistic. Love what I do. I don't take clients on myself now, but I've got an amazing team of support coordinators that do. And I'm always here to be contacted at any time. So thank you for listening. You will be given a copy of all these slides, so you can go back and look at them at a later date. But please reach out. There's no cost for talking on the phone. There's no cost for having a chat. We also help people without support coordination funding. So it's really, really important to be clear that just because you don't have support coordination funding, you don't have to miss out. It also depends on how your plan is managed, et cetera, et cetera. So if you've got any questions, I'll hand back to you now, Bree, and we'll see if we can answer them.
Yeah. We do have a few questions, but I might go to Jen first, because she's an experienced parent, and I love how you just said, like, sometimes there are families with multiple children or multiple people within the family unit. Jen does have 2 children that are on NDIS, and very different as well. So she's going to share her experience. I'll just get you to stop sharing your screen there, Kate.
Sorry, yep.
But I must admit, I was listening to so many things. I'm like, oh my gosh, I really need to go back and look at my About Me page for my son and our goals. And oh my gosh, like, it's triggered so much thoughts. And there's definitely some great questions and comments. So we'll come back to those in a minute, but I'll hand over to you now, Jen.
Okay, cool. Hey, everyone. So yeah, I've got 2 children. So I've got Henry, who's 10. He's in year 4 in a mainstream school. He has multiple diagnoses, including cerebral palsy. He's autistic and he's an ADHDer. He's quite a complex guy, and he's just as delightful as he is complex. His little brother Connor is 5. He like Bree said, he has a lot of different, he has different needs. So he is deaf. He has global developmental delay. There's probably some other stuff that's going to emerge, but at the moment, that's kind of where we're at. So they are quite different children, even in their personalities. And one of the things that I talk about when I talk about our carer statement, I will include a lot of information in there around like the differences and the dynamic between the children. One of those examples is like, so Connor, for example, I think he verbally stims. He makes a lot of noise. He's deaf, and apparently, like a lot of deaf people make a lot of noise because, of course, they can't hear themselves. So he is quite loud. And Henry, on the other hand, is really an avoider of loud noises. So that can cause, some tricky situations in our household. So that's kind of one of the things that I would certainly mention carer statement. The stuff that I kind of mention in our carer statement, a lot of it, I mean, I might highlight some stuff that's been recommended by the therapists if it's super, super important, but mainly I'll cover the stuff that's not covered in the reports from the therapist. So yeah, so we talk about, and that's the family stuff that Kate spoke about. So like the family relationships. So we've talked about the dynamics a little bit, about how we go. We also, both children sleep, co-sleep. So I totally get the whole sleep challenge, and just how tired it can make you. And then it just makes your day hard when you wake up tired, and but making them aware of those kind of things. These are the things that may not necessarily be included in the therapist reports, but the things that are important, in terms of how our family operate and the support that we need. So we talk about the co-sleeping and the impact that has. We talk about the impact on our relationship as a couple. So I talk about the fact that we don't get a lot of time together, and that it does have an impact on our relationship, because sometimes I feel like we're kind of drifting off in opposite directions sometimes, and if you don't have that time to come back in and kind of connect, it can have an impact on the relationship. So like I'll cover off some stuff like that. I'm always mindful about, and I find it such a balance, because I think when the kids are older, they could have access to information, so I'm always really careful about how I word it. But I do certainly like to, I think it's important to mention the things that we're having a hard time with. So for example, we've requested, core funding for, look at me, this is my lack of sleep, core funding for support workers. So when we talk about support workers and why we need them, I mentioned specifically in our carer statement that Josh and I have started having date nights. So on a Friday, we have a support worker for 4 hours, and Josh and I can go out to dinner or a movie or just somewhere to sit and chat and kind of touch base on where the family's at and what's happening, because sometimes there's that 2 ships in a night kind of feeling that we have. So I would talk about that. I do talk about parent mental health. And even feeling isolated, or because sometimes there's certain behaviours that make it tricky, or you might just choose to stay at home rather than going out or catching up with other people. So I would talk about things like that as well. I might talk about wanting to increase my work. Like I find the work that I do really rewarding, and I would like to do more work, but I would need support to be able to do that. So I might talk about something like that as well, and how that would help my my mental health, as well as also the financial impact. And even mentioning the financial impact on the family of not being able to work, you know, I would cover off on things like that as well. You know, and that could be specifically because I'm trying to get some support hours to look after the kids so that I can do some of these things. And then, you know, we talk about the, what's the line? They've got a line, something about protecting the family, something about the family, keeping the family together. I can't think what the specific wording is. Kate will probably know. But, you know, we kind of talk about that support helping the family, and then being able to then be better parents and be able to better support our children if we're supported as well. I know they kind of talk about not supporting. It's really about funding for the child. But I think also there's a balance there that if the family fall apart, that's not going to be good for the kids. So a lot of stuff kind of does cross-reference. And I totally agree with Kate. Like, I've had so many times when people have said, or planners have said, oh no, they don't fund that, or oh no, they won't do that. And I will say to them, if I get the feeling that they're not going to put it forward, I do make a point of saying, look, I want you to put it forward. I get that you don't necessarily agree with it, but I want you to put it forward and say that the parent has insisted that this be put forward, because it's really important to them, even if you don't agree with it. So there have been times when I have done that. So I think also talking about, you know, we talk about capacity building for the children, but also capacity building for parents, and how parents can do particular workshops. Like, I've done heaps of training and workshops that have really supported me to support my children, even if it's around just a better understanding of what particular behaviours are, so then I can support. And then it, you know, there's heaps of examples. I've done NDIS training that I've claimed for, around self-management, things like that, because we do self-manage both of our plans. Saying that, we've plan managed Connors for a number of years, and it was very helpful. I think one of the things that, as a parent, what you're going to do when you are preparing is you're going to think about how you want to have the plan managed, because they will ask you, and you need to be able to say what you would like to do. So there was a stage early on where we just went with plan managed with Connor, and it worked really well, because there was nothing kind of, I'm going to say tricky, but it was all pretty straightforward. So it was pretty well, you know, your therapist hours, and some other stuff there was nothing really too out of the box on it. So I was happy for the plan manager to kind of take the bulk of the workload and help, especially because, you know, 2 children was new, and we kind of needed that bit of breathing space. But as we've gone on, you know, I'm a big fan of self-management and the flexibility that it gives. So we are now managing both our children's plans that way. And I have to say, I mean, it's not the topic today about using the plan, whatever, but the app, I love the app. It is so easy. So yeah, things like that make our life easier, good. But yeah, for self-management, I find it really does help a lot. So yeah, I wanted to touch on that carer statement and the kind of stuff that we do. Also, I did include, and yeah, Kate said about not making it too long. I think I try to keep ours at about a page and a half. And I like to thank them, and I like to press on the fact that our kids are making progress, like they are, you know, that support is, what's that terminology that they use? I've gone blank again, but you know, about effective and beneficial. You hear effective and beneficial. I like to say that it is effective and beneficial because it is working and we are making progress, but can we please have some more? So so talking about what progress has been made, and then walking that fine line between progress made and untapped need or untapped potential, or what is still needed. So I spend, because both of the children are in there, I don't know if it's like the third or the fourth or the fifth, wherever we are in terms of how many plans it has been, but it's been more than one. So now if I do what I do with our preparation, I think I spend a lot of time on reports and a lot of time on thinking about the progress stuff. So looking at where we were at and what progress has been made, and I kind of break it down by the developmental areas. So I kind of go gross motor, fine motor, communication, self-care, cognitive, like I kind of go around that. I also have a special box for safety stuff. And I find that they pay attention to safety stuff. So if there's anything that's sort of related to safety, I always include that. But yeah, finding that line between progress made and still needing more funding for more support. I spend a lot of time focusing on that. And then I spend a lot of time on reports and making sure that our people have everything that they need for the reports. I always make sure that we have a meeting, even if you're just grabbing them for 10 minutes at the end of a therapy session, just to have a conversation about, okay, what do we think the priorities are for the next plan? Is there anything that we need to look out for? Is there any special equipment that we need to look at? Or, you know, where are we at? So I always make sure we do that. I never, ever, like Kate said, never, ever, ever send off a report without checking it first. And I always get our people, we've got a great team. I always get our people to send me drafts. And if there's anything that I feel is missing, or if I've got providers, you know, I've got therapists at different providers. So then we might talk about, okay, so the speechies recommended this. Can we just cross that into our OT? Because there's so many things that can be interchangeable or like relevant to both. And I kind of go with the mentality of just get it covered. More is better than not enough. So I'll have reports that will recommend the same thing, even though they're from different therapists, just to really get that message across. I also feel like being really covered off on your reports and what's included in them is very good if you do feel like you're not happy with the plan that you get and you do want to look at review, because you really have covered off on a whole lot of stuff. They've recommended this stuff. And then if the planner hasn't taken those recommendations on board, I feel like you're in a better space than if you just haven't covered stuff at all. So like I said, like we've got two quite complex children and they've got different needs. So for Henry, like our OT would include things like specialist cutlery, recommendations on intensive programs. I must admit we haven't always been successful with that. That can get trickier the older the children get, I feel, but that's our personal experience. Always try to back it up. Anything where I think that there's a risk that they'll say no, I try to kind of back up as much as I can. So maybe a letter from the intensive provider, and even, the studies around why a particular type of therapy is evidence-based and proven to be effective and beneficial. I might cover off on that sort of stuff as well. Lots of, if there's anything that I need a quote for a specific amount, I will include it. We also include, like, as well as your typical therapy hours. So that's sort of like, I figure like that's like your baseline, like you're always going to have your therapy hour recommendations in there, but also around like therapy hours if they need to do any school visits or if they need to liaise with teachers around things that will support them, you know, in that mainstream setting, for example, or support them with their independence or support them with their friendships, you know, all that sort of stuff. So, and also hours for if there's technology assessments required, and then, you know, assisted technology, like Henry always has AFOs, but not just AFOs, like then there's specialist shoes that have to fit over the AFOs because he's kind of got like this it's not just the one thing, it's a thing, and then there's another thing around it. So, you know, shoes can be really tricky. And then there's socks, moisture wicking, special seamless socks that are required. One thing that we did, you know, and it's funny, and I always say to people, don't, like if someone says, oh no, you're not going to get this or you're not going to get that. And we've talked about how sometimes the planners will say those kind of things, but also often parents, or if you seek advice from other people, they will say stuff like, oh no, you won't get this or you won't get that, or no, you know, they say you won't get support hours for children because they say it's the parent's responsibility. This is the sort of language that you might hear about. But I say to people that just push forward on your own path of what's important for your family and what's important, what needs you have, and just see what happens. Like I'm just thinking about swimming lessons. So we've had swimming lessons funded for Henry, not just the gap funded, but the actual whole swimming lessons funded. So if people, and again, you know, and you hear a lot about, oh, it's individual cases and it's an individual plan, and it is true. But also the importance of having good report writers. Like our physio is so funny. She's like, oh, I always get swimming approved. I always, you know, and she always, and, you know, she's quite proud of the fact that she knows how to write a report to get certain things covered. So that's pretty cool. So with Connor, he's a bit different, of course, like I said. So we've, so he's coming into school. He is 5, and this year before school starting, there's been a super big push on school readiness, and he has an intensive budget at the moment. I didn't even realize there was such a thing as an intensive budget, but apparently there is. So we're lucky that we've got an intensive budget for him, and he's got different needs. So his communication preference is through Auslan. So we have Auslan in the home. So we get reports on that. We get the special assistive technology, or this sensory stuff that we need, or there's like headbands and caps to keep hearing aids in. There's Auslan resources like books and stuff like that. So there's all sorts of things that we get covered and ask, and we might be thinking about these sort of things that we need, and then we'll take it to the therapist and ask them to then include it in the reports. Yeah, so that's it. I'm just aware of the time, and I know that there are heaps. I keep seeing
lots of questions.
The numbers are going up and up and up, and I'm thinking, I can stop talking, but I've got more to tell. But I'll stop talking.
Great examples though, and I think as well, like it is like we can learn so much of other parents just from hearing some of the things that they think about for the year to come. Especially when you're going into your first plan, it's kind of like, I don't know what my goal should be. What should I be asking for? And like, yes, it's, again, like listen to what other people are saying and some of the things that they're thinking about. Speak with your therapy team. Doesn't necessarily mean that's exactly what you're going to get or what's right for your child, but it's about arming yourself with that information. And I think it's really important, like when we talk about parent capacity building, like if that's something, if you're going into your first plan, try and get some of that improved, try and do some of those NDIS courses so that, you know, you can better your knowledge on how to access the scheme. But we've got so many questions, lots around support coordination. So I'll start from the top and work through, but Shan's asked, is a support coordinator someone who can help me with advocating for what I need in the plan with the ECEI? My child is 6 years old and the lady is always telling me that I cannot have what I'm asking. And we hear it time and time again. I'm sure I've actually heard it. And I said, if my therapist has put it in the report, I want it to go to the NDIS or the NDIA. Like, you're not the one to decide whether.
You're absolutely right. And yes, we can help you. When you come to us, we actually generate our own document, and that basically covers everything that's in what we've said. I've got to be very careful with what I say because we're very different. Just remember that ECIC, LACs get paid by the NDIS. So very different objectives. So absolutely, yes, you can still use, at any stage, you can use a support coordinator, whether you're ECIC or the normal NDIS. I won't go too much into that.
Yeah, it is. And like, I mean, like, and Jen even said it, we hear it time and time again, but I'm like, I've actually had that experience myself. And I said, you know, our therapist has put it in there for a reason. I would like that to be included. Because they didn't just put it in there for no reason. So.
No, that's right. So when we do our document, we actually list out everything that's requested: core support, daily activities, support coordination, and we request that whole document goes to the planner. So nothing's missing.
The next one is from Layla, and on one of the slides, there was a statement about reworking goals. Is that something that can be updated outside of planning and review? And I love this question because my son has cerebral palsy, and every time we get a new piece of equipment at the moment, it triggers a new plan. So we've been kind of on this like little cycle of just getting the same plan, just starting.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I was talking about with PACE coming out on the 31st.
Yeah.
So every single time something changed in a plan currently, they had to issue a new plan, even if it was to get the support coordination funding changed from NDIA managed to self-managed. That will stop because it'll then now become a plan variation, which means they can go into the system, update whatever you want to update. If it's AT requests, they can actually put the funding into the current plan rather than creating a whole new plan. Now, sometimes that was a loophole and that worked really well for some people.
Does work well for me.
That's right. Obviously not for you because you're getting all these new plans all the time. So I can't remember what the question was.
Just around updating your
yes,
outside of a planning meeting. So at the
absolutely
moment,
you can. Absolutely you can.
Is that right?
But I probably wouldn't bother.
Yeah.
Like, well, what is the reasoning for doing that? What's it going to change by doing it?
It's not going to affect funding, is it? Is it going to affect funding? No. I mean, if it was going to be big enough to affect funding, if a goal change, would you then be talking about a change of circumstance?
Absolutely.
And going in and doing that? Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's, I'd really want to get to the bottom of, you know, have a discussion with the parent as to why do you want to change these goals? Which goals do you want to change? Why? And then determine whether we need to do a plan reassessment.
Great. Now we do have a question around, is there someone that can help me write a carer impact statement? And I have seen that someone has kindly shared our resource around writing a carer impact statement, but outside of, you know, utilizing resources that are available on the internet, is there anyone that can help you with that?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a template that we use that is a very, very good example of a carer's impact statement. I don't like people to get too much help with it. I like them to get an outline of this is what we need, but I don't actually really want someone to sit there and write it for you because it's not in your words. So any carer's impact statement that we get that we include in documents, I do not touch. If there's spelling mistakes, if there's grammar, I do not touch it because that is showing who you are.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can give you templates. That's absolutely I'm not got no problem giving those out. But in terms of actually someone sitting down and helping you write it, unless there was a reason in terms of you couldn't write or something else, I'd really want you to have a go at it on your own.
Yeah. There's a couple more around support coordination, but I might just go to a few of the actual more planning and preparing questions first. Do you have any current tips on trying to justify or secure carer support hours, core funding for a young child, which I see as the only way to facilitate part-time work? And quite often we hear this, the NDIS pushes back saying it's, you know, a Department of Education or it's a parental responsibility. Like we hear this so often, you can't get support hours until your child's 7. Like we hear it time and time again. Do you have
and it's absolute rubbish. So I will just go back on something that both of you said, Jenny and Bree. When we go to planning meetings, we never, ever, ever mention the word education. The reason we don't mention education is because education is not the NDIS's responsibility. I agree with case management and so forth, but in terms of wanting support hours, the support hours are always before school and always after school. Because remember, it's your choice and control how you use that funding when you get it. So we put in a weekly timetable and say, this is how we'll use the funding. It'll be before school, it'll be after school, we'll do this, we'll do that. And then again, it's all about the evidence. Every single therapist needs to write in that you need support hours because of this. Go to your GP and say, due to your mental health, you need to go back to work. Due to your financial situation, you need to go back to work. If you don't get support, financial support from the NDIS, this is not possible. So it's all about giving them the evidence. Now, I can pretty much guarantee you that the majority of you won't get it, but go to S100, go to reviews and give yourself the best chance of getting it by putting all the evidence in the reports, because it can be done and it is done. I'm one of those people. I couldn't have started this business if it wasn't for the NDIS. End of story.
Yeah. Just in oh, sorry, go Jen.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say also, I don't know what, I mean, look, Connor's 5. We've had core funding for support workers for the last 2 plans. So I know that it's not correct to say that you cannot get it. And I also know that it is very difficult. Yeah, I don't know if it's, do you find if there's more than one child? I've always pondered, because I feel like, is it because there's more than one child with a disability in our family, and he's the younger one, that it's made a difference in terms of being able to get that? I mean, I've heard other families who do have more than one child with a disability having perhaps more success, but I don't know if that's the reason or not.
I don't want to say this,
yeah,
but I'm going to.
Oh.
It is totally dependent on whose desk the file falls on.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, I agree.
And it's wrong.
We've had support hours for quite a number of years now. My son's 8 now. He's our only child that does have a disability, but he does have a physical disability. So I always wonder whether, because it's physical and there's so much more like lifting and equipment and, you know, everything takes so much extra time. I've always wondered whether that's what's benefited us. But I do think the best year in our planning we got funding was the year that we did a functional capacity assessment.
Absolutely.
Like that was a game changer, from like, you know, just like 2 hours a week to, you know, tripling that was the functional capacity assessment.
Absolutely. And it's so important. And even though you talk about the physical disabilities, I absolutely agree with you. And that's probably why they did fund it. But from my personal experience, where it's neurological, that word, do you know, for me, the emotional turmoil, I can't talk today, turmoil that it took on me, having one and then having another, and you're absolutely right, Jen, they are chalk and cheese. I felt like this, when the second one got diagnosed, I had to learn a whole nother new language. I'd already learned one new language and now I was learning another. The emotional effect that had on me, that's why I needed the core support hours to support me. My children don't want other people supporting them. They want me supporting them. So if I'm going to support them, then I need someone in to support me. So it's all about reframing things and making the NDIS work for you. It is very flexible. You've just got to know how to use it and have the confidence to use it.
I am mindful we are at the hour mark, but I will just throw in these couple of support coordination questions because it is a big, I mean, we hear about it so often, and I think, yeah, there is a lot of misconceptions around support coordination, what they do, how you get it. But I've got a question. There are so many companies that do support coordination. What questions should you ask to determine if the company is experienced enough? So, you know, how do you find a good support coordinator?
How do you find a good support coordinator? You pick up the phone and you speak to them.
Yeah.
I'm a very, very big believer in trusting your gut. And if you don't get that feeling when you're talking to them, don't go with them. If they don't answer the phone, if they don't return your phone call in 24 hours, I have a policy that all my support coordinators will respond to an email or to a phone call within 24 hours. Even if it's to say, I've got your email, I'm looking into it, because it's all about communication. They sit there and say, well, how many clients have you got? That to me is not really relevant. It's more about the personal information, the feeling.
The next question is, how difficult is it to get support coordination funding? Because I believe it isn't the easiest funding to get. Is it a flat fee? And if we don't have support coordination funded in a current plan, can you use capacity building or core funds?
Yeah, okay. I will start by saying I am not a traditional support coordinator. So the majority that you will go to, they will only see you if you've got support coordination, and they will charge you billables, which is every time you email, speak to them on the phone, do research. They will then bill you, and once your support coordination funding is gone, they say, see you later, come back and see us next year. I don't agree with any of that, so I don't bill that way. I don't really want to go into it here. I'm more than happy to have a chat with people because we've got a few different options of what's available depending on what's in your plan. You can use core, you can use capacity building. NDIS have just released guidelines to say that you can use core for support coordination. Now, the problem is some children don't get core, or they get very limited. It is difficult to get support coordination, and I think it is going to be far more difficult when the PACE system comes in. And the reason for that is the LACs should be your first point of contact. I have heard on the grapevine, I don't know if I believe it, that only people that require housing or something else will get support coordination. I don't agree with it. And I don't know what's going to happen come 3 months' time. So it's really a wait and see. But again, I would just ring the support coordinator, see what they're offering, because if people want billables, I sit there and say to them, that's great, unless you're extremely complex, which yes, we do billables for extremely complex. That's not the way I operate, and that's not the way that I believe is the best for the participant. So you're probably better to go somewhere else.
And so what we'll do is we will share Kate's contact details as well in a follow-up email. I'm very mindful of the time, but I just think for anyone that is preparing for the NDIS planning meeting, we will send out some resources, but it does really come down to those reports and being across them and reviewing them. We want you to think about what management style you want, and it's okay to start off small. Like, so for when I started off doing self-managed, I only did one portion of my plan and the rest was NDIA managed. So yeah, have a chat to people, work out, see what's working for them, think about your own situation and know what's going to work best for you. Sian has asked what the pay system is. So the NDIS is actually moving over to a new system. They are currently trialling it in Tasmania. It is expected to roll out the rest of Australia from October. You won't automatically go over to it. It'll be when your new plan or a plan reassessment comes in. There are some NDIS webinars that they are hosting, so I'll try and share the links to those for you as well. It is meant to be better. It's meant to be participant focused. It is meant to be from my understanding, a lot easier for them to make changes without triggering new plans. So it does sound better, but obviously with any new system, we imagine that there are going to be teething issues. So I'll try and find the links to that for you, Sian, and include that.
Bree, I've actually got the slides for one of their participant.
Perfect.
Because I sat on that the other day, so I'll send those to you, and you're more
Yeah,
than
we
welcome
can
to share
include
them.
that in the email as well. That'd be awesome. But yes, we'd like to thank Kate from Inspire & Co. Jen, thank you for sharing your experience. The information presented has been really helpful. I want to thank everyone who's joined on Zoom and those who've tuned in the Kindred community. Looking ahead, I'm really excited to announce that our next session is scheduled for the 7th of August, and we will delve into the topic of what to actually expect
September?
in the planning meeting.
September?
Sorry? Oh, sorry, I've still got my influenza brain fog. Yes, September. Thank you. So this promises to be an invaluable opportunity to gather tips and guidance. We're going to have an early childhood partner and also another experienced parent. So they'll provide some guidance on effectively preparing for the day of your meeting, what to expect during that meeting, who can attend with you, and just equipping you for strategies for after it's over. It can be quite overwhelming. It can be quite emotional, especially when you've got to speak about your child and quite a lot of the time in a deficit-focused way.
Make sure you have a support coordinator to go with you.
So mark your calendars and make sure you join us for what's sure to be another great session. And yeah, thank you so much for being part of today's event, and we look forward to empowering you to make informed choices, overcome any challenges, and help you make the most of your child's plan to support their development. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks for inviting us, Bree. I really
Ben.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Bree.